Good morning, all of you. Welcome back to the channel Ansarkari. So let's start with our today's discussion from the Hindu newspaper for 1st of December 2022. So GDP growth dips to 6.3% as manufacturing sector slides. And our chief economic advisor says that the nation's recovery from pandemic continues. We are recovering out of it. And economy is growing faster when we compare it with the other countries, their rate of growth. And we are on a track for 6.8% to 7% expansion in the current fiscal year. So as you can see in this graph, it stands at 6.3%, and we have seen a dip compared to the previous month. So GDP, it grew by 6.3% during the July to September quarter, and which is a slowdown from 13.5% in the first quarter of this current fiscal year. So a massive decline, we can say, from 13.5% to 6.3%. So this is, we say that we expect a slower growth because of a high inflation rate and a weaker growth in our exports. And we have been discussing in detail about the export sector also. We had seen the breakdown of entire performance of India, the current share in our exports, so how much the exports are contributing to the GDP and all of that. So talking about the growth in the agricultural GVA, that is gross value added, that increased. But when we look at the GVA of the manufacturing and the mining sector, that has contracted. So agriculture has performed better when we compare it with the manufacturing and the mining sector. Now, taking up the next topic, we see that Supreme Court is set to look into the Bilkis Bano's petition against early release of 11 convicts. So Bilkis Bano case, you should be knowing about this. So Bilkis Bano, she was gang raped along with murdering of 7 of her family members during the 2002 Gujarat riots. So government the Gujarat government has taken a decision to prematurely release the 11 convicts who were serving the life sentence for this case. And in 2022, May this year, Supreme Court it held that the remission that would be considered as per the policy which was in vogue at the time of the conviction. So the policy of the particular state that was functioning when the conviction took place under this case would be applicable. And a separate petition has been filed by Miss Bano, who argues that the release has affected her fundamental right to life under Article 21 of the Constitution. Then India and US are conducting a joint military exercise which is called Yudh Abhyas, and China is obviously concerned about this. So India-US exercise near the line of actual control happening in Ladakh. It irks China. Obviously, China does not find itself comfortable being given India and US are conducting their joint military exercises in Ladakh, which is very close to LAC. So talking about the the key personality who had an important role in the China's economic reforms during 1980s. So at that time, Jiang Zemin, he played a crucial role, but unfortunately he has died, and the economy it grew fivefolds during the time of the China's economic reforms. It was earlier at $347 billion in 1989, and it grew up till $1.5 trillion in 2002. So that's how the economy of China responded so amazingly to the economic reforms, and it grew in it grew so quickly. And we also see that China it became a member of the WTO in the year 2001. So these developments they happened under the Jiang Zemin. So he played a crucial role in China's economic reforms. And moving ahead, what else do we have? Let's have a look. So for the economics and also from disaster management perspective, you should be knowing about the National Disaster Management Authority, and this can be asked in prelims. Then the avian flu, it has led to the death of birds in Alappuzha, so this is a growing concern. And talking about Jallikattu, so we are every day we are talking about the developments that are happening around this topic of Jallikattu. So Supreme Court has to say that the way Jallikattu is being held in Tamil Nadu, that might be cruel. So the sport of Jallikattu, as such, now it might not be brutal, but the form in which it was being held in the state, that might be cruel. So the form is being questioned here, and we're not saying, or the Supreme Court is not saying that now it might not be brutal, but its form can be cruel in nature. So the state of Tamil Nadu, it had laid down laws and guidelines and the rules that need to be followed while Jallikattu was observed. So it had laid down procedures to protect the bulls from brutality, and violation of these rules would definitely going to attract penal action. Also, a petition has been filed. So the basic issue here is that the Jallikattu, it was antithetical to the very nature and the body structure of the bull, which is a bovine animal, and also it was the cruelty that is pure to compel a frightened, choiceless animal to suffer the pain. So that is the basic issue here in this practice of Jallikattu. And Justice Rastogi, he said that the court should confine itself to the rules and not to the ground realities, to which the petitioner, he said that the court should also test the efficacy of the law. So we should not just restrict to the rules, but also ensure that how are they being implemented on the ground and how things are turning. Moving ahead, okay, so Kerala's man-animal conflict mitigation team, it is selected for the Wildlife Trust of India award. So you can cite it as an example. And the basically the team that was constituted to deal with the man-animal conflict, it started working at 5 a.m. in the morning and finished its work around the midnight. So the method or the procedure that it adopted and it found successful in reducing the man-animal conflict was that it tried to make people aware and provide them information about the movement of wild elephants through WhatsApp groups. So that's how the people they became aware, and they were able to track the movement of elephants and their like location, and accordingly take their own decisions so that they are not able to encounter them. And yeah, that's how this thing, even this a small step, was successful in dealing with the man animal conflict, and they've been selected for the Wildlife Trust of India award. Taking up the editorials, so we have been again discussing about the collegium system, the NGC, and how the government is delaying the appointments, the recommendations made by the Supreme Court regarding the appointments of the judges. So we are seeing that government, it is violating the prevailing legal position that recommendations once reiterated by the collegium, after due consideration of its objections, they are binding on the government. But we are seeing that instances of the government ignoring even 2 or 3 reiterations by the Supreme Court are being ignored and delayed, and it shows the absence of any communication of objections or reservations also. So if any, and we see that the government, they may have about particular candidates. So if these things they're not there, so still the government, it is ignoring the recommendations of Supreme Court, which have been reiterated even thrice. But Constitution says that once the Supreme Court again recommends the same names, so government is bound to appoint them as judges. So that is binding on the government. And one way of stopping this thing can be that, firstly, the government can either it can clear the pending recommendations with due dispatch, or another way can be that the judiciary can begin or it can agree to a process of reforms in which the collegium system it functions. So reforming the collegium system can be the another step which can be taken by the Supreme Court. And also, the government can bring about a new constitutional mechanism to make the appointments without undermining the judicial authority. So, these are the three options which are present, and let's see which one would be adopted to resolve this tussle between judiciary and the executive. Talking about the micronutrient malnutrition in India, we have previously discussed in detail about the topic of malnutrition, but this particular article is focusing more upon the food fortification and especially of rice. So it is providing us with the data and how also it is providing us with the case studies also. So let's go through this article and firstly, we'll be looking at the data. So, according to the NFHS Survey 5, which has been conducted for the period 2019 to 2021, every second Indian woman is anemic, every third child is stunted and malnourished, and every fifth child is wasted. So, this is the data, and it shows the how much you can say that the problem is prevailing. And according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, the Food Security Report for 2021, India has been ranked 101 out of the 116 countries in the Global Hunger Index for 2021. So again, it is showing the reality, the picture when we talk about malnutrition in India, and also there is data provided by the Global Nutrition Report 2021. So, stunting among children in India is significantly higher than the Asian average of 21.8%, and in India it is around 30%. So, firstly, you should also be knowing what is stunting, what is wasting. So, that is the thing. And the solution that has been provided for this for dealing with this micronutrient malnutrition is the food fortification. So we'll be looking at what is fortification of food. So it is the process of adding nutrients to the food. Suppose rice and wheat, they are fortified with iron, folic acid, and vitamin B12, and salt is fortified with iron and iodine. Then iodized salts that has been used for the past few decades in India. So we are consuming iodized salt. So whenever you go for any grocery shopping next time, whenever you buy a salt, so you'll be finding the mention or you spot the name on it, you might get it as iodized salt also. So it all the fortified foods, they also have a symbol of F written on these food products. So pay attention when you know buy the fortified food next time, so that you are able to identify and come to realization that we are consuming iodized salt for a longer time. Now moving ahead, looking at the rice program and anemia. So this is a case study from Maharashtra in the Gadchiroli district. So, under this district, fortified rice was being distributed as part of the targeted public distribution program. And when we look at the results, the program has been a success in terms of preventing cases of anemia from 58.9%, which is approximately 59%, to 30%. So that is the scale by which just fortification of rice has helped in reducing the cases of anemia within a span of only 2 years. So that's how the results turned out to be when we talk about fortified rice. And you can definitely mention this case study in your answers whenever there's a question regarding dealing with the malnutrition and what solutions are there to deal with this crisis. So there are certain schemes in which we can ensure that fortified food is distributed, and those schemes are the firstly obviously we know it is PDS, targeted PDS, then it is ICDS, and then we have POSHM, the PM Poshan scheme, which is the midday meal scheme. So ICDS is integrated child development services and PDS is a public distribution system. So these can play definitely a major role in ensuring that the fortified food is reaching the last mile. And the second case study is talking, it is from Gujarat. So, noon meal scheme in Gujarat, basically, the case study is about providing fortified food and the midday meal scheme. So, under this, we see that The micronutrient fortified rice was provided to school children aged 6 to 12 years in 2018 to 19 as part of the midday meal scheme and found increased hemoglobin concentration when we look at the results. So, iron deficiency anemia is a major public health concern because it is responsible for 3.6% of disability adjusted life years, which is so it is the number of years in which life is lost due to premature mortality and years lived with disability. So because of disability, because of diseases, so much of time and money is wasted, and you also the opportunity cost is giving up your income, which you would have earned if you were not anemic. So that is what is the meaning of disability adjusted life years, and it is responsible for 3.6% of the life lost. So in India, the cost of one disability adjusted life year lost due to the iron deficiency anemia is approximately rupees 30,000. So this is the cost, and because of iron deficiency anemia in India, and there is definitely a need for precautions. So activists they have expressed concerns that excess, even providing excess of iron overload from the fortified rice, that can be dangerous. So we need to ensure a balance of it and prevent excess concentration or excess consumption of the fortified food also. So excess of anything becomes harmful. And it has been observed that the Jharkhand's tribal population has suffered because of the sickle cell anemia and thalassemia. So thalassemia is the blood cancer, and as we are talking about just one solution in this entire article with two case studies and the data, when we talk about different reports and the indexes, we come to the conclusion that we need to ensure the fortified food is present, but with a precaution, and it is the key to malnutrition issue which the nation continues to grapple with. So we need to work upon ensuring the efficacy and the cost effectiveness. So this initiative is definitely cost effective also. So we need to just maintain a balance of it and ensure that it reaches the last mile. Moving ahead, so towards a robust triumvirate, so it is basically talking about the reforms that are required as far as the Election Commission of India is concerned. A triumvirate means that it has three members. One is the Chief Election Commissioner, and two are the election commissioners. So, what are the pending electoral reforms in India? So, basically, this article is talking about two issues, and we need to work upon strengthening the structure of Election Commission of India in order to ensure its independent functioning. And so the electoral reforms, they must be in the direction of ensuring the strengthening of the election commission's inherent structure of handling the misuse of muscle and money power during elections, which leads to violations of model code of conduct. And so the first reform must be in the direction of ensuring that the election commissioners, they should be selected by the executive or by a collegium. So we need to decide this because we are here talking about, do we need to like bring the chief election commissioner and the election commissioners on the same platform when we are talking about their appointment. So the process of appointment and the manner of appointment. So Dinesh Goswami Committee in 1990, it suggested that a chief election commissioner must be appointed by the president in consultation with the Chief Justice of India and the leader of opposition. Then, so it applied the same. So it is in all, it is talking about application of the same criteria to the appointments of election commissioners along with the chief election commissioner. And another method that has been suggested by the National Commission to review the working of the Constitution, which was formed under Justice M.N. Venkatachalaya. So he said that the committee said that the chief election commissioner and other election commissioners, they should be appointed on the recommendation of a body constituting of Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, Speaker of Lok Sabha, and the Deputy Chairman of the Rajya Sabha. And similarly, there are the 255th report of the Law Commission is suggesting the manner in which the appointment should be carried out, and it also suggests measures to safeguard the election commissioners from arbitrary removal. So whenever, like, it also says that there should be same manner of removal of the election commissioners and chief election commissioners also. So both the appointment and the removal must be under the same process. And chief election commissioner, it can only be removed by impeachment process, obviously, which is not easy. And similarly, the case should be for the election commissioners in order to ensure their independent functioning. And the second reform must be in the direction to providing same security from arbitrary removal to the election commissioner, which I just talked about, as the 255th report of the Law Commission had suggested. And so their manner of removal should be the same. So Supreme Court in the session case, it conferred equal powers on the election commissioners as those enjoyed by the chief election commissioners, and even offered majority power whereby any two, that is, the two election commissioners, they can overrule even the chief election commissioners when we're talking about their decision making process. So these were the powers conferred by Supreme Court in the session case judgment. However, it missed upon providing the same status when it comes to providing the same constitutional powers and protection to the election commissioners. So let's see how this process is going to unfold and what is going to be the result. Let's move ahead. So China's current nuclear modernization exercise, it has exceeded the previous modernization attempts in both scale and complexity when we talk about their nuclear warheads. So China being India's neighbor, we need to take this into account. Moving ahead. So few days ago, AIIMS was attacked. It witnessed a ransomware attack. So are these attacks increasing in number in India? And this topic becomes important for both PT and me. So what is a ransomware? Ransomware, it is a type of malicious software which is used by cyber criminals to infect a computer system by blocking access to the stored data by encrypting the files. So ransomware, it is a and after once the data is encrypted, a ransom is demanded from the owner in exchange for decryption key. So that's how a ransomware it functions. And the malware may usually be injected remotely by tricking the user into downloading it upon clicking an ostensibly safe web link sent via an email. So if you get any link through your email and you do not know, or you find it you're a little doubtful about that, so do not go ahead and click on that, because that can lead to installation of a ransomware attack on your device also, and leading to data theft. So that's how ransomware attacks they are conducted. And also it is, as we know, that can also be accompanied by theft of sensitive data for other sinister motives also. So how serious are these ransomware attacks? And when we look at the AIIMS servers that were attacked, so at least 5 of them were hosting the data related to more than 3 crore patients, which was compromised. And it leads to India several cases of ransomware attacks, which targets the commercial and the critical infrastructure. So AIIMS, it has local area network comprising around 6,500 computers supporting the institute. So you can imagine the impact of this ransomware attack when it can, obviously it's a major threat because it can lead to crippling down of our functioning of our health system. So in future, when we look at such ransomware attacks that have been conducted in India, so SpiceJet had faced such a threat, then the public sector undertaking of Oil India also had to go through a ransomware attack in April. Then, according to Interpol's first ever global crime trend report, it says that ransomware was the second highest ranking threat after money laundering in India, and it stands at 66%. Now, talking about what laws or what are the agencies in India which deal with cyber attacks. So, the CERTIN, which is known by everyone, that is India's Computer Emergency Response Team, was constituted in 2004, and it is our national nodal agency that collects, analyzes, and circulates the inputs on cyber attacks, and it also has guidelines to deal with them. Then it also ensures training to the computer system managers. Then, secondly, we have the National Cybersecurity Coordinator under the National Security Council Secretariat, who coordinates with different agencies at the national level on cybersecurity issues. Thirdly, we have the National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Sector that has been set up for ensuring the protection of such an infrastructure and the information. Then we have the Cyber Swachhta Kendra, and it has been launched for detection of malicious software programs and to provide free tools to remove them. Lastly, we have the National Cyber Coordination Center, which works on creating awareness about existing and the potential threats. So these agencies and the frameworks and the institutions that we have, you need to know them so you can cite them in your mains answers, and please find out more about them because these can independently be asked in prelims exam also. Now, I can say that this article, which is talking about the history of the city of Patna, becomes the most crucial topic for today. So, as we know that Patna, it was earlier known as India's Florence, and also called as Patliputra. So it's an ancient city which is founded at the confluence of the river Sun and Ganga. Originally, it was founded by the Magadhan ruler Ajat-Shatru, and Patliputra was what Delhi was to become more than a millennium later. So Patliputra was the major center, we can say the major capital before Delhi came up as the capital and the major center of activities and trade and commerce happening. So Greek travelers like Megasthenes, who came as an ambassador to the court of the Mauryas, he praised Patliputra's local self-government system and the sense of honesty among the locals. And he's written the book Indica, so he's mentioned in his book about the city of Patliputra, its local self-government system and the loyalty and the honesty of the locals. Then we see that the city it became the capital of Nandas and later the Mauryas also Guptas and Palas. Then Chandragupta Maurya was born here. Ashoka ruled from here as did Chandragupta I, II, and Samudragupta. Then later it was a place of prime importance for Aurangzeb, who briefly named it Azimabad after his grandson Muhammad Azim. Then also under the Afghan king Sher Shah Suri, the city came to be christened as Patna. So from the reign of Sheshashuri, we know the city as Patna. Before that, we knew it like Patliputra. And when we talk about the foreign travelers, we have Fahim and Kyunsang in the 14th, who visited in the 4th and the 7th century, who drew a picture of Patliputra as being one among the very best cities in the world. Also, when we talk about the famous Nalanda University, was few kilometers from it, and some famous Chinese monks like Hunsang, they spent 6 years in the city, so they have accounted, they have provided their accounts about his account probably provides best memory of the rule of Harshvardhan in the first half of the 7th century. And before Yunsang, there was Fahin, another Chinese traveler who grazed the city in the 4th century. So he called the city of Patna as the city of flowers. So next up, we see that he also said that have been a brave man. So when we're talking about Sher Shah Suri, so why he is called Sher Shah, that's because it is believed that he killed a tiger and with his bare hands only, without any weapons or tools. So from then on, he is known as Sher Shah, and he built a fort in Patna and mosque also. So you can see how the city of Patna, the Patliputra, has been the main center as when we talk about history, and also we talk about certain British travelers like Ralph Fitch. So he said a very long and great town with a flourishing trade in cotton, sugar, and opium. So that's how he addressed the city of Patna. So there are different accounts of various foreign travelers who visited India, and when we talk about our Dynasties, how the city functioned as their capital, the main center of administration and their working. So that is the importance of the present day city of Patna to us, to India, and to our history and culture. When we talk about the Delimitation Commission, so Supreme Court says that while the constitutional validity of the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act clause went unchallenged. So recently a petition has been filed in the Supreme Court which is not challenging the clause, which is that we can say that actually that clause should have been challenged. However, the process or the manner has been challenged under that petition. So that is what the Supreme Court is saying, and it says that according to this Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Act, it gives power to the Delimitation Commission to carry out the readjustment of the constituencies in the UT formed after the dilution of Article 370. However, the petitioners, they argue that only the Election Commission of India under Section 60 of the Act was empowered to conduct the delimitation exercise, and they further argue that Article 170 of the Constitution barred delimitation exercise on the basis of 2011 census, and it had, so this means that it had to either happen on the basis of 2001 census or await the first census after the year 2026. So that is the issue here, and it is completely like it is the power of the election commission of India, not the delimitation commission. So that is what is Supreme Court is saying, that you should have challenged the provision. Talking about G20, so there are certain flowery sentences which you can write in your mains answers. So the target for India, what are the issues that India is going to take up when it is going to host the G20 summit the next year? So a prime minister says that India's G20 agenda will be inclusive, ambitious, and action oriented. So when you have to say a lot in less, so you can use these keywords. It is going to be inclusive, ambitious, action oriented, and decisive. So our priorities, they'll focus on healing our one earth, creating harmony within our one family, and giving hope for one future. So one earth, one family, one future, that is Vasudev Kutumbakam. Then, we are also going to focus on sustainable and environment-friendly lifestyle. So I'm here talking about what are the issues that India is going to highlight, what are the things that India is going to take up in the G20 summit. So next up would be mitigating, ensuring, and talking about, discussing about the mitigating risks posed by the weapons of the mass destruction and enhancing the global security. And the presidency is going to be healing, harmony, and hope. So it is going to make India's presidency healing, harmony, and hope. Then, so we let us work together to shape a new paradigm of human-centric globalization. So this becomes the keyword, human-centric globalization. Talking about the GM crops, so Supreme Court, it is worried about the effect of the GM crops when we talk about the livelihood of women farm laborers. So the petition, it challenges the environmental node which has been given to the GM mustard by the Genetic Engineering and Appraisal Committee, and also, it says that use of herbicide-tolerant crops, it will encourage the farmers to spray more chemicals to kill the weeds, and it is going to leave large amount of toxic chemicals residue on the crops, which is going to be harmful for human consumption and also animals consumption. So the thing that has been highlighted by the Supreme Court is that women agricultural laborers in rural areas, they are traditionally engaged in de-weeding exercise, and when the GM crops come up, so their role is, so they basically they are not required on the fields because we are having GM crops which are herbicide tolerant, and whenever you will be spraying a herbicide on them, so the plants would not get affected and the weeds would get killed. So the role of the female farm laborers would be eliminated, and it is going to have a direct impact on their livelihoods. So the bench, it says that women, they are an integral part of the Indian agricultural landscape, from paddy fields to tea estates, and they work so hard They work in knee-deep waters in the fields, bending whole day and working, and that's how they are being rewarded. So Supreme Court's own technical expert committee said that the GM crops they were not meant for agriculture in the Indian context, and they may be suitable in Western context where there are large farms, but not in India. So they might be suitable for the Western countries, but not for India. And the GM crop, that is GM mustard, which is named the Dhara mustard hybrid 11, that is DMH 11, has been approved, and it has been cleared despite the warnings from both the parliamentary committee and the Supreme Court's technical expert committee. And so if GM mustard is approved for the commercial cultivation, this is going to be the first genetically modified food crop which is going to be available to the Indian farmers. And before it, BT brinjal was also like approved, but later it was withdrawn by the government, and because it found the BT brinjal riddled with inconsistencies. So that is the concern of Supreme Court regarding GM crops, GM mustard. Talking about the Great Indian Bustard, it is critically endangered, and Supreme Court is again asking, can we come up with a project on similar lines as we have Project Tiger to ensure protection and conservation of the population of Great Indian Bustard? And they inhabit the state of Gujarat and Rajasthan. So we are seeing up coming up cases coming up relating to their deaths because of their encounter or crisscrossing with the power transmission lines leading to their deaths. So do we require a project on similar lines or not, is what the Supreme Court is asking. Then Russia and China bombers, they fly joint patrols over the Pacific. So they are having drills which show increasingly close defense ties between Russia and China, and it is being conducted over Western Pacific. So you should know where is the Sea of Japan, where is East China Sea, and bordered by which all countries. Then we look at India's core sector. The growth has been seen at decimal level of only 0.1% in the month of October. So we saw that the natural gas output shrank, the cement production contracted, and the index of core industries, it constitutes about 40% of the index of industrial production, which is less than 50%. So our core sector is not performing well, and the growth has been only 0.1% in October. The new digital lending norms to kick in today, and Reserve Bank of India, it has modified the guidelines on digital lending for the customers who had taken loans prior to September 2, and it seeks to protect the customers from unethical loan recovery practices. So the borrowers, they are fooled when it comes to recovering the loan by the lenders. And under the new norms, all the loans which are dispersed and the repayments, they are required to be executed only between the bank accounts of the borrower and the regulated entities, which are the banks or the NBFCs, without any pass-through or pool account of the lending service providers. So there is going to be direct transaction between the bank and the borrowers without any third-party intervention, and any fees or charges that are payable to these third parties, that is, who act as pool accounts of the lending service providers, that is going to be paid by only the banks and the NBFCs and not by the borrowers. So that's how the borrowers are fooled in paying these fees and charges, which is the obligation of these banks. So talking about sports, we should be knowing that the Khel Ratna awardees, and like these awards have been given. So Khel Ratna award has been given to Sharat Kamal for the sport of table tennis, and you can find out who all have been given Dhyan Chand Award. Then Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad Trophy goes to Guru Nanak Dev University of Amritsar. So this is it from the Hindu. Let's take up the Financial Express. So in Financial Express, we see that The Parekh panel, which has been constituted for gas pricing, so it says it argues or it recommends for the freedom of pricing of the gases. So the Kirit Parekh panel, it reviewed the natural gas prices in India and it recommends a price band of between $4 to $6.5 a unit for the gas from the old legacy fields, which accounts for over 70% of the domestic output and ushering in a fully market determined rates by the forces of demand and supply by January 2027. And it also proposes bringing the natural gas under GST. And right now, the state-run ONGC and oil, they are pricing the natural gas at $8.57. So this needs to come down. Also, when we look at the prices over the last 1 year, we have seen that the pipe cooking gas and the prices have shot up by 70% because of increase in their input cost. So the panel, it suggests linking the gas or the price of the gases which are produced by the state-owned firms from the fields with the crude oil prices instead of benchmarking them to the international gas prices market. So that is the suggestion by the Kirit Parekh panel. Moving ahead. So 8 core sectors, they are from crude oil, natural gas, refinery products, and cements. Talking about the reforms in our tax structure, we see one of the key developments over the last couple of years is that India's tax buoyancy has certainly improved, and it was about 2.5 times last year for the direct taxes, and it should be about two this year. So this is a good number, and we haven't seen this kind of tax buoyancy ever. So given the inflation, our tax buoyancy remains strong. Then talking about what can be the reforms as far as the tax structure is concerned. So the people they are asking for doing away with the securities transaction tax. So STT it is already low in India and it does not pose any huge burden. So this is growing at about 10% the tax rate, and then many companies they are arguing or they're asking for bringing the services sector also under the 15% corporate tax rate. But as of now, 15% rate is only applicable for the manufacturing companies. And then talking about the personal income tax system and the structure and the capital gains tax. So these two areas need more reforms in the future. And moving ahead, so the stock market, the capital market touches its lifetime highs, and this is basically the rally is driven by the FPI, that is foreign portfolio investors. So the investors, their investments through the participatory notes, it stands at 1 year high in the month of October, and that's why we are seeing capital market is touching its all-time high. And again, is it really in synergy with the ground reality? We just talked about the growth of the core sector in the month of October, and on the other side, the capital market is touching its all-time high. So moving ahead. So what's PEs and VCs want from the government? Basically, the private equities and the VCs. So what is permanent capital? Permanent capital vehicle, it sustains the investment with an unlimited time horizon. So that's why the name permanent, because it is meant for unlimited time horizon. There is no fixed time period when we are investing in such permanent capital vehicles. So there are some very long-term investors who want to let the compounding effect play out on their investments. So they want there are obviously certain investors who want to invest for a very long period, and they will continue to support the firms for longer period with their private capital. So the permanent capital vehicles, they are known as evergreen structures. So here the word evergreen is defined as always reliable. So these permanent capital vehicles are considered to be reliable all the time, and because they are meant for a longer time period. That's why the the risk is very less. And when we talk about the long term capital gains tax in India, the listed shares which are held for a period of 12 months, they attract a tax of 10%, and for the unlisted shares, they are attracted as at a 20% when held for a period of 2 years. So this is it for today. Thank you so much for joining Ansarkari, and do not forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, share the video as much as possible. Thank you so much.